This is Jacqueline Taylor, and I'm presenting the free black population of the 1800s. What was the free black population? The free black population was a community of slaves that were granted freedom through the Emancipation Proclamation. Slaves either became free through the natural process of the proclamation or through their owner's consent. For example, if the owner had no use for them anymore, for instance, if the slave couldn't perform like they needed them to or like they used to, the owners would set them free. Ex-slaves could either live on the land that was passed down to them from their slave owners, or they could migrate to other states. When did the movement take place? This movement took place during the antebellum period in the early 1800s to the late 1860s. And this period was a time that was identified between before the Civil War and after the War of 1812. How did this movement originate? This was a movement that was originated due to the Emancipation Proclamation being issued. This was a document that announced all African Americans free of slavery in the southern states, and it was issued by then President Abraham Lincoln in 1863. Where did this movement affect African Americans? Initially, the proclamation only affected the southern states, but after some time, it influenced the northern states to participate as well. And by the 1860s, the North had accumulated 225,961 free slaves, and for the South, they'd accumulated 250,787 free slaves. Daily life for the free blacks, even though they were free, they had many restrictions that prohibited them from different jobs and migrating, living with other slaves, and from it prohibited the free black population from growing. Free blacks had to work. They couldn't be idle. If they didn't work, they could be arrested and hired for more than 3 years as a penalty. In southern states, free blacks weren't allowed to sell liquor or operate taverns or grocery stores. They had curfews, and they were prohibited from having night meetings. In northern states, free black residents, they couldn't leave their state for more than 90 days. If they did, they were not allowed to return. And they couldn't marry whites or slaves, or they couldn't teach slaves to read or write. Some free blacks did own land and homes, but the quality of the community and the home was based off of a certain mannerism. For example, free blacks that were not well off, like the whites, would likely live in a deprived neighborhood, and some free blacks were kidnapped and sold to other slave owners, even though they were free. In conclusion, the Emancipation Proclamation announced slaves free from slavery, but free African Americans were still deprived from progressing and growing, in certain jobs or moving to certain areas and marrying and living with other slaves. The restrictions was a way for the whites to control the free black population. But during the course of that type of treatment, African Americans were able to create a strong, healthy workforce and advance to be barbers, blacksmiths, carpenters, butchers, shopkeepers, and they were able to play an important role in the economy and the world.